The silent threat. The galaxy had seen many wars. Empires rose, coalitions fell, fleets clashed in the void like storms of fire. Yet even in the darkest ages there was always noise, signals, warnings, boasts, threats. The stars never went silent, until Earth acted. Whispers had been circling for years. Some called them myths, others dismissed them as propaganda. But deep inside the archives of the Galactic Council, one phrase repeated again and again: Dark Matter Warships. No one dared to speak it aloud in meetings. To admit it was to admit that Earth, small, scarred, and underestimated, had built something beyond imagination. It began with a mistake. A border patrol near the Denari expanse intercepted strange signals. At first they thought it was pirate chatter. Then the signals grew stronger, sharper, unnatural, like echoes of something not bound by normal space. Ships were sent to investigate, but none returned. Their black boxes recovered later recorded only fragments. A soundless void, sensors blinded, gravity tearing in impossible ways. And then, silence. Commanders argued it was a collapsed starfield. Scientists claimed it was just interference. Politicians laughed it off. But the whispers spread. The humans had been quiet for too long. They had not expanded like other species. They had not begged for protection, nor did they send fleets to join the Council's grand wars. They had stayed on their worlds, building in silence. Waiting. One night, in the great chamber of the Council, the silence finally broke. A scout ship limped back into orbit over its colony station, hull scarred, crew half mad. Their captain's voice was shaky, broken by static. His last words before the feed cut still echoed across the chamber. The Terrans, they're not building warships of steel or plasma. They're shaping the dark itself. We saw shadows move like blades. The chamber went cold. For cycles, the Council had mocked Earth. They called them backward, too fragile, too emotional. They had voted against giving Earth military rights, declaring them unfit. Yet here was proof that humanity had gone further than anyone dared. They had reached into the forbidden, into the matter that made up the invisible skeleton of the universe and twisted it into weapons. The question was not if it was true. The question was why the humans were silent. In the far reaches of Sol space, near the void where signals bent and light refused to pass, a fleet stirred. They did not shine with steel hulls or gleaming banners. They looked like absence given shape, massive shadows shaped into impossible angles. Observers would later describe them as wounds carved into space. Where these ships moved, stars bent and sensors screamed. The humans did not announce them. They did not parade them before the galaxy. The first time the warships appeared, they came without warning. It happened in the Kelith system. A warlord fleet boasting nearly 300 cruisers had enslaved 3 colonies under Council protection. They thought Earth would not respond. They thought humanity was too weak, too quiet, too isolated. Then, the stars in Kelith dimmed. The fleet appeared in total silence. No thrusters, no comms, no war drums. Just shadow. The Kelith pirates opened fire, but their beams bent away, swallowed as though the void itself refused to let them strike. One by one, the cruisers tore apart, not from missiles or plasma, but from the crushing weight of twisted gravity. Hulls cracked like shells under an unseen hammer. In less than 3 minutes, 300 ships became drifting wrecks. Witnesses described it later as the most terrifying thing they had ever seen. Not war, but erasure. And then, just as silently, the fleet was gone. Only wreckage remained. And silence. Across the galaxy, panic spread like wildfire. The Council called emergency meetings. Admirals shouted, demanded explanations, accused each other of lies. Some claimed the ships were impossible. Others argued humanity had stolen forbidden science. A few, the oldest and wisest, said only one thing: this is not the beginning of war. This is a warning. The galaxy fell silent, not because humanity attacked, but because no one knew what Earth wanted. The humans had not claimed the colonies. They had not taken territory. They had simply destroyed an entire fleet and left. That silence was worse than any declaration of war. For the first time in centuries, every empire hesitated. No one dared send a fleet near Sol. No one dared speak against humanity in public. Rumors filled the void, but none were answered. Earth had shown its shadow, and the galaxy held its breath. The council in fear, the Galactic Council chamber, had never been so tense. Normally, the great hall echoed with arguments, laughter, and the arrogant boasting of empires. Now it was filled with whispers, shaking voices, and the heavy silence of fear. At the center, a massive display floated above the delegates. The recording of the Keyleth battle played again. First came the pirate fleet, rows of shining cruisers, spreading across the system like a wall of fire. Then, out of the void, the shadows arrived. They did not look like ships in the traditional sense. They looked like wounds in the stars, black silhouettes that pulled light inward. The display showed beams of plasma bending away, torpedoes vanishing into darkness, and then hulls cracking apart as if crushed by an invisible fist. 300 cruisers erased in less than 3 minutes. When the recording ended, the silence was unbearable. Finally, Councillor Mareth, a scaled elder from the Kirene Dominion, rose from his seat. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Tell me, who here can still call the humans harmless?" Murmurs erupted around the hall. Some pounded their tables, demanding answers. Others stared down in shame, remembering how often they had mocked humanity as fragile, emotional creatures unfit for war. A tall commander from the Valon Alliance slammed her hand on the desk. "This cannot be tolerated. If Earth has mastered weapons of the void, then they threaten every empire in this chamber. We must strike now before it is too late." Her words triggered chaos. Delegates shouted at once, voices overlapping like a storm. Some supported her, insisting that Earth must be stopped before its shadows spread. Others argued it was impossible. How could they fight something that ignored plasma, crushed fleets like paper, and vanished without leaving a trace? Amid the chaos, the council's oldest member, a frail figure with eyes clouded by age, raised his hand. His voice was soft, but it carried across the chamber. "Fools, do you not see? The humans already warned us." The hall quieted. He continued. "They destroyed a fleet, but they did not take the system. They left no occupation force, no claim of power. They could have spread their banners across Keyleth, but they chose silence. Why?" No one answered. The old one leaned closer to his microphone. "Because this is not war. This is a demonstration." A chill ran through the room. Far from the council, hidden in the dark between stars, the truth unfolded. On Earth's command station, a small group of human leaders watched the galaxy's reaction. Reports of fear, panic, and sudden diplomacy requests filled the screens. The world's governments had unified years earlier, not through peace, but through necessity. They had discovered something no one else dared to touch: dark matter. Harnessing. It was madness. Dark matter was the skeleton of the universe, unseen but everywhere. To manipulate it was to risk tearing space itself apart. Yet humanity had done it, quietly, patiently, without telling anyone. The warships were not built to conquer. They were built because Earth had learned a hard truth. The galaxy respected only power. For years, humans had been pushed aside, denied equal rights in council fleets, mocked for their emotions, their art, their stubborn independence. Humanity endured it all. But while others laughed, Earth built something no one dared imagine. Now the shadows had been seen, and the galaxy trembled. Back. In the council chamber, a transmission suddenly cut through the arguments. The chamber lights dimmed, and a single holographic message appeared. It was from Earth. The words were simple: no voice, no face, only cold text, written in the common galactic tongue. Keyleth was a fraction. Do not test us again. The chamber erupted in gasps. Delegates turned to each other in panic. Some shouted that it was a threat of extermination. Others argued it was a warning not to provoke. But all of them knew one thing: the galaxy was no longer in control. Earth had spoken, and their silence afterward was even more terrifying. Across the stars, news spread faster than light. Small colonies sent desperate messages to Earth, begging for protection. Warlords who had ruled for centuries suddenly surrendered to council patrols rather than risk attracting the shadows. Trade routes froze as empires hesitated to move their fleets, fearing they might draw human attention. The galaxy had lived in constant noise, wars, raids, endless speeches. But now a strange silence spread across systems. Every leader asked the same question: what will the humans do next? And on Earth, within the hidden command halls, the leaders asked themselves a darker question: how long before the galaxy forces our hand? Shadows over the stars. The galaxy had always been noisy. Fleets moved, borders shifted, and warlords shouted their victories into the void. But after Calith, something changed. For the first time in centuries, the stars grew quiet. Merchants canceled trade convoys, fearful that the shadows would swallow them by mistake. Pirate bands who once ruled the lanes with fire now abandoned their hideouts and vanished into exile. Even great empires paused their expansion, their fleets pulled back to home territory. All across the galaxy, the silence of fear spread. No one dared speak of it publicly, but in private chambers, rulers whispered, "The humans are watching." In the Galactic Council, the mood was no better. Delegates sat in tense silence, avoiding each other's eyes. They had argued for days without progress. One faction insisted on preparing for war, building larger fleets and striking Earth before it was too late. Another faction argued that any attempt would only end with their destruction. Whispers grew of the spy fleet sent to the Sol system. 5 war cruisers had been dispatched in secret, tasked with gathering intelligence. They never returned. Not even debris was found. It was as if the ships had never existed. When rumors leaked, panic doubled. If entire fleets could vanish without a trace, then no empire was safe. One commander muttered during a council session, "We are not facing warships. We are facing the void itself." Meanwhile, far from the council chambers, small colonies began to take matters into their own hands. Leaders of minor worlds, planets long ignored and bullied by greater powers, sent hidden transmissions to Earth. "Protect us," they begged. "If your shadows guard our skies, no warlord will dare touch us," and in some cases they were right. One pirate band attempted to raid a frontier colony that had pledged itself to Earth. The moment they entered orbit, the stars flickered. Shadows unfolded across the sky, blotting out starlight. The raiders did not even fire. Their ships simply broke apart in silence, as if the universe itself rejected them. The colony lived. Word spread. Soon, hundreds of worlds whispered their loyalty to Earth, terrified but desperate. But not everyone bowed. In secret, an alliance of empires formed. They were the proud, the arrogant, the fearful. They refused to live under the shadow of humanity. In a hidden station, their admirals met. "They cannot be unstoppable," one declared, pounding the table. "Every weapon has a weakness. They bend light and consume matter," another argued. "But no weapon is infinite. They must have limits. If we find those limits, we can end this fear." Plans were drawn, fleets were prepared, but all of it was hidden, for no one dared admit in public that they were preparing to strike Earth. Inside Sol's borders, humanity was not blind. In their command halls, leaders studied the galaxy's movements carefully. Reports of colonies asking for protection filled their screens. At the same time, they intercepted strange patterns of fleet buildup far from Earth. Humanity knew what was coming. On one screen, a human officer whispered, "They think they can test us." The commander of the warships, an old soldier who had once fought when Earth was weak, narrowed his eyes. "Let them, they will learn the silence again." And then the galaxy gasped. An entire star system disappeared. It began with a mining colony on the edge of known space. One day their transmissions stopped. Patrols were sent to investigate. None returned. When long-range sensors scanned the coordinates, they found nothing. The star still burned, the planet still circled, but the system itself was gone from maps, as if erased from every network. Whispers claimed the humans had unleashed their shadows again, consuming the system, to send a warning. Others said it was only a malfunction, a trick of data. But deep inside, everyone knew the truth. Earth had moved. And if Earth could erase a system from the galaxy's memory, what else could they do? In the council chamber, the silence deepened. Delegates sat pale and sweating. The question was no longer whether the humans had power, it was whether anyone could survive standing against them. For the first time in history, the galaxy's greatest powers hesitated. No fleets moved. No wars began. The galaxy itself felt frozen under the shadow of Earth, and yet in the darkness of hidden stations, the alliance of empires prepared their strike. They would test the humans, no matter the cost. The Council did not know. The colonies did not know. Even Earth did not know yet, but soon, the shadows would rise again. The message in the void, the galaxy had seen many warnings before. Empires had threatened one another with fleets, weapons, and star-destroying devices. But Earth's silence was different. Silence spoke, louder than fire. Every world was watching. Some colonies whispered prayers to Earth, calling them protectors. Others whispered curses, calling them monsters. The Galactic Council debated endlessly, but no decision came. No one dared to move first, but in the shadows the secret alliance of empires had already made their move. 5 great powers, united not by friendship but by fear, gathered fleets in hidden docks. Their plan was bold. They would not attack Earth's home system, too dangerous. Instead, they chose a human colony far on the edge of known space. It was a young settlement, a mining world with little defense. To the Alliance, it was perfect bait. If Earth truly commands the void, one admiral said, let us see if they can protect everything. If they cannot, the myth of their shadows will collapse. The fleet launched in silence. Hundreds of ships slipped through the darkness, jamming signals, blocking comms. The colony never saw them coming. On the surface, human workers looked up and froze. The sky filled with foreign warships, their weapons glowing with fire. The settlers tried to send distress calls, but every signal was cut. Then the first shots fell. Mines exploded, habitats cracked, shields flickered. Families screamed as the bombardment began. The admirals watched with pride. See? The shadows are not here. The humans cannot be everywhere. But they were wrong. At first, nothing happened. Minutes passed. Colonies burned. The admirals began to laugh, convinced the humans were powerless outside their home. But then, the stars flickered, not dimmed, not covered, flickered. Like candles in the wind, every sensor screamed. Gravitational readings spiked beyond limits. Shadows unfolded not from hyperspace, not from any known drive, but from nowhere. They bent around reality itself, peeling open like wounds in the sky. The Dark Matter Warships had arrived. They did not roar. They did not signal. They did not threaten. They simply existed, and their existence was enough. The Alliance fleet opened fire. Plasma beams, torpedoes, kinetic shells, all shot toward the shadows, but the weapons never landed. Beams, bent swallowed into the void. Torpedoes spun away into nothing. Shells crumbled before touching the hulls. Then the shadows answered. The first cruiser cracked apart, broken by invisible hands. Another stretched unnaturally before snapping like glass. Gravity twisted, shields folded inward, engines imploded. Ship after ship collapsed in silence, as if the void itself consumed them. Within minutes, the Alliance's grand fleet was gone, not destroyed in fire, erased. Only silence remained. The survivors on the colony surface looked upward in awe. The shadows loomed above them, massive and alien, their shapes shifting like moving darkness. For a moment, the settlers feared they too would vanish. But the shadows did not strike them. Instead, they left something behind. Floating above the ruined fleet was a single massive wreck. Carved into its shattered hull were words written in the common galactic tongue. We warned you. The silence will spread. The message shook the galaxy. News traveled faster than any fleet. Entire worlds froze in terror. Warlords who once defied the Council now surrendered without a word. Armies disbanded before a single battle. Trade wars ended overnight. Some called it the dawn of peace. Others called it the beginning of slavery, under Earth. But all agreed on one truth. Humanity had spoken. In the council chamber, the arguments collapsed into stunned silence. No one dared suggest war anymore. No one dared raise their voice. The council had seen what happened to those who tested Earth. One delegate whispered the thought on everyone's mind. We live in their silence now. Back on Earth, the leaders stood in their hidden command halls. They watched the message ripple across the stars. Was it wise to leave the words? One officer asked. The commander of the fleet shook his head slowly. It was necessary. They will keep testing us. Now they know the cost. But what if they do not stop? The commander's eyes were dark. Then the silence will not end, until the galaxy learns. That night, across 1,000 systems, the galaxy itself felt smaller. Fleets stayed docked. Weapons remained cold. And in the darkness between stars, the shadows waited. The galaxy falls silent. The galaxy had always thrived on motion, fleets moving, wars burning, colonies rising. But after the second strike, after Earth's shadows erased the Alliance fleet and left their chilling message, everything stopped. For the first time in history, the stars stood still. In the council chamber, no one argued anymore. Delegates who once roared with pride now whispered like frightened children. They remembered the wreck, the words carved in cold steel. We warned you. The silence will spread. Some wanted to surrender to Earth outright, to bend knee before humanity and beg for mercy. Others suggested hiding, pulling their fleets deep into home systems and hoping the shadows would pass them by. But no one spoke of war anymore. That idea had been buried in Keyleth and erased in the colony strike. The Council's supreme speaker, a figure known for his arrogance, now trembled as he addressed the hall. Understand this, he said, his voice cracked. We do not command the galaxy anymore, the humans do. And they do so without firing a single warning shot. One mistake, and we all vanish. No one disagreed. Across the stars, empires shifted. Colonies that once feared raids suddenly lived in peace. Pirate banners were lowered, their fleets abandoned in fear. Trade lanes reopened under strange silence. Ships moving carefully, eyes on the void, whispering prayers that no shadow would appear. For some, this was salvation. At last, war had stopped. At last, the galaxy could breathe. But for others, it was chains. Rulers muttered in private that they now lived under human shadow. No one could move, no one could conquer. No one could even speak freely without fearing the silence. Fear was everywhere, and Earth did nothing to deny it. In hidden command halls on Earth, the leaders watched the galaxy with cold eyes. Messages poured in daily, offers of alliances, surrender, tribute, and desperate pleas for protection. Humanity accepted some, ignored others. The commanders knew the truth. The Dark Matter Warships were not infinite. They were dangerous to Earth itself. Their power barely controlled. Every launch risked tearing holes in reality. But the galaxy didn't need to know that. The myth of unstoppable shadows was stronger than the truth. One officer spoke to the commander quietly. The galaxy believes we can erase it at will. The commander answered, Good. As long as they believe, they will not test us again. But still some questions remained. Why had humanity built such weapons? Why risk the void? The answer was simple, though few outside Earth understood. Because humanity had learned the hard way that the galaxy respected only power. For years, Earth had been ignored, mocked, left vulnerable. No one had come to protect them. So they had built their own protection, so terrifying, so absolute, that no one could ignore them again. It was not conquest. It was survival. 1 month after the Alliance fleet's destruction, the Council held a final emergency session. No speeches, no arguments, just one decision. From that day forward, no empire would challenge Earth. No fleets would test Sol's borders. No one would speak of humanity as weak again. The galaxy had fallen silent, and in that silence, Earth reigned. On a lonely observation deck aboard the flagship of the Shadow Fleet, the commander stood in silence, staring out into the void. The warships floated around him, great wounds in the stars, bending the light into impossible shapes. He whispered to himself, not to the crew, not to the galaxy, but to the universe itself. We did not want this power, but we will use it. Not for glory, not for conquest, but to make sure no one dares to break the silence again. The shadows pulsed in agreement, their forms shifting like endless night. Across 1,000 systems, the galaxy held its breath. Fleets stayed docked. Wars ended before they began. Pirates vanished. For the first time in living memory, there was peace. But it was not the peace of trust. It was the peace of fear. The peace of silence. The peace of Earth. Final line. And somewhere in the dark, where no empire dared to look, the humans whispered their own warning. If we can shape the void into warships, what do you think we will build next?